Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the shir that we give to our dear alumni. And thank you to the Alumni Association headed by Tomim Hanayla Binyamin Lerner, Harav Mendy Flamer, and Yisrael Lifshitz. We very much appreciate all that you do. And the Mirza Hashem will get brachis. And this is an amazing way where we all connect together. In general, the month of Kislev is a special time to connect and farbring together, and how much more so after Yotes and Chav Kislev, right before Hanukkah, how much more so that this is such a special time to unite and connect together. The shir is entitled, "The 8 Lessons That I Learned from the Menorah," and a little bit of a history of the shir, what it's all about. We all know that the Minhag Chabad is to sit by the candles and watch the Menorah, but more important, as the Rebbe Rashab said, "Mizol sich zuhören zu der Licht," that we should listen to the candles. And that's obviously a much deeper thing than just watching the candles. It's very easy to watch the candles. It's so much harder to actually listen into the candles. And there's not just a message, a general message. The avoid is that each night we should have something to think about that night, a lesson that we can take home, a lesson that we can internalize, something that we can grow with every single night of Hanukkah. Now, in general, we all know that there are the general messages of the candles, that light dispels dark, ma'at or doicha har bechoshech, and that's not what we're going to be talking about tonight. That is obviously very important, but everybody knows that. Tonight we are going to talk about 8 specific inyanim that is brought down in different places in Chassidus and other places. 8 specific meditation, so to speak, or 8 specific lessons that we can all take from the Menorah. And maybe every night we review one of these lessons with ourselves, with our families, with our children, with our spouses, with our friends, with our communities. And this way, every night is something that we can take away, something that we can learn, something that we can listen to. And as they say in Yiddish, Nish nor herin, nor der herin, not just to listen with your ears, but to internalize with your heart. Der herin the licht, to listen in to the messages that these wonderful candles, the light of the Menorah, which is a taste of the Ur of Mashiach, those lights are telling us a story, and those lights are telling us a message, and the lights of Hanukkah are giving us chayis for our own avodas Hashem. So we are going to go through 8 different meditations, 8 different things to think about when we come to the nights of Hanukkah. So we are going to start with night number 1. Night number 1, you have never lit the Menorah before. Your family is gathered together. The first lit candle is the shamish. You're holding the shamish in your hand, and we're about to light the first candle. And it's last year when I was in that moment of lighting the first candle, I reminded myself of a fascinating story. And this is lesson number 1. This story is Hisboinenus and lesson number 1. The story is with a very, very famous Israeli citizen, and his name is Mr. Yehuda Avner. He passed away recently. He wrote a book, The Prime Ministers. He was a boy born in England that came to Eretz Yisrael at the time of the War of Independence. And he rose to great prominence, being ambassador, speechwriter, and very close with many prime ministers. But his main hero in his life that he writes about and he was the closest to was the Prime Minister Menachem Begin. Menachem Begin, we know, was a person that came from a much more committed Yiddish lifestyle, and he was very much mechabed the Rebbe to the extent that even as Prime Minister, before he went to visit President Carter, he came to the Rebbe, and they had a yechidus. And after his first meeting with Carter, he sent back this Yehuda Avner to report to the Rebbe of how the meeting went. And in short, I'm not going to go into all the details because we do have 8 lessons to learn. In short, he comes to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe basically tells them that we are so close that I'm shocked that you didn't become an official Lubavitcher Chassid. And they start talking, and the Rebbe tells them, I want to give you an insight as to how I view my job. What is the job of a Rebbe? And the Rebbe told him that in the world you have wicks, in the world you have wax, but until they come together and they're lit, they're not a candle. They're just objects which are coming together, not fulfilling their purpose. But when that wick is lit and it brings light to the world, so then it becomes a candle. And the Rebbe told him that my job is to make sure that every neshama, which ner Hashem nishmas adam, the neshama is a candle of the Eibishter, every neshama gets lit and lives for its true purpose. So he asked the Rebbe, did you light my candle? After all the time we're spending together, does the Rebbe feel that he lit the candle of Yehuda Avner? And the Rebbe told him this very, very important line. The Rebbe told him that I can only give you the match, but the candle you have to light yourself. Meaning, in very simple words, that the Rebbe gives us the koyach and an inspiration and the ability to serve the Eibishter. But Avodas Hashem is going to come from ourselves. And before we light the first candle, and we hold up that match, and we're lighting it the first night ourselves, we have to think about this story and ask ourselves, are we also lighting up our own neshama? Are we also lighting up, the Rebbe gave us the match, and are we using the koiches that we have to actually bring light to our own neshama? And that is Hisbonenus number 1 for night number 1. When it comes to night number 2, so this is a thought for night number 2. There is a Hayoim Yoim. The Hayoim Yoim is Gimel Shvat, where the Rebbe speaks about the printing of the Kutei Torah in Torah Or. Happens to be my anniversary, and it's coming up very quickly. And it's also this year will be the first yard site of my dear uncle Yoina of Sholem, whose yard site is Gimel Shvat. And in the Hayoim Yoim, it makes the following statement, that V'ahavta, that the Alter Rebbe's name was Shnei Or, 2 lights. We're talking about the second night of Hanukkah, 2 lights. And that V'ahavta, the word V'ahavta, loving Hashem, is the same gematria as Shtei Pamim Or. 2 times the gematria of the word light, 2 lights, brings to V'ahavta. That's what it says in the Hayoim Yoim. What does that mean? What does that mean that 2 lights, the second night of Hanukkah, 2 lights, Shnei Pamim Or, brings us to V'ahavta? What can we think as we look at those 2 lights on the Menorah? What can we take? What can we learn? What can we think about these 2 lights? And it really means something, and it's so important what it's written in that line. The 2 lights that the Rabbeim are referring to are the lights of Nigla de Torah and the light of Pnimius HaTorah. They're both Ur of Hashem. Now, when it comes to the Ahavta, unfortunately for most Yidden, we either have one or the other. You have people which they serve the Eibishter, they do the actions. They're very makbid on Shulchan Aruch. But it's missing the koyach, it's missing the inspiration, it's missing the heart. And for that you have Pnimius HaTorah. You have other people, they are on the opposite extreme. They love Hashem. They love Hashem. They're in love with the Eibishter. They got the Pnimius, they got the heart. But when it comes to doing what the Eibishter wants, they don't have time to do. They're busy loving Hashem. As a bocher, I once heard an amazing story from Rabbi Kalmanson. I remember he came to speak in 770. And he said the story that there was one time a father that came to visit his son. And he's in the airport and he wants to be picked up. And he calls his son. He says, "Son, I'm in the airport." And the son just says, "Ta, you're here. I love you. I love you." And finally the father tells him, "Son, stop loving me and come pick me up from the airport." Just the av in the heart is not enough. We have to be able to pick the father up in the airport. The action is so important. So true via hafta has to have two parts. There has to be the emotional ava, and it has to express itself in maisa. And that's why you need to have nigla de Torah and pnimius HaTorah. You have to have the heart, and you have to have the acting, the deed. And that's why shtei pa'amim or. If you want to get true ve'ahavta, you need to have shtei pa'amim or. You have to have two types of light: the ord of nigla de Torah and the ord of pnimius HaTorah. This is something to think about on the second night of Hanukkah. The third night of Hanukkah, we already have a chazaka of or. We already have a strength. We already have 3 nights that we have a chazaka of or. We've been bringing light to ourselves 3 nights in a row. And on the third night of Hanukkah, so I want everyone to think about not just now that we have the strength for ourselves, about what our tafkid is in the world. We know the Rebbe says, "Histakel b'shloisha dvarim ve'ein atabol l'dei avera." If you think about shloisha dvarim, you won't come to do an avera. What's shloisha dvarim? That in addition to serving Hashem, that's you and Hashem, you also have to make a dira b'tachtoinim. There's 3 components in avodas Hashem: us, the Eibishter, and the world. And we have to remember that, first of all, our job is light. We are lamplighters. The Sidim B'chlal, there's a famous Hayoim Yoim of Chav Tes Tevis, where the Rebbe explains a Gemara. The Gemara says, "Anan polo de yemoma anon," literally meaning that we are day workers. We work during the day. And the Rebbe says that Chassidim have to understand this Gemara to mean that we are here to bring day to the world. We are day workers. Our job is to bring or to the world. And especially the Rebbe Rashav said when they asked him, what is a chassid, what is a tamim, what is somebody that learned in Tomchei Tmimim? And he said the famous words, a tamim is a lamchernik. He's a lamplighter. That they used to be in Russia, and it was all dark and cold. And they had these big lamps in the street. And there was somebody that would have to go around and light those lamps to bring varmkeit, to bring chayis to the entire kehila, to the entire city, to the entire world. And anan polo diyamamanon, we, the tmimim, the chassidim, is not enough that we bring light to our own homes, that we are bringing or to our families, or to ourselves. On the third night, the third lesson we have to think about is the hashpa mibachutz. What effect are we having on the outside? Anan, remember that stakel b'shloisha dvarim, 3 nights, 3 chizuk, remind us of the third part of our avodas Hashem. Not just us and the Eibishter, which is 2 parts, but also us, the Eibishter, and how we're bringing that all together in making the dira and making the tachdin making the world ready for Kabbalah's Pnei Mashiach. So that is on night number 3, meditation number 3. When it comes to number 4, a fourth meditation, a fourth lesson that we can take from Or. There's a Yom Yom. The Yom Yom is Vav Elul. And in the Yom Yom of Vav Elul, it tells us that the Baal Shem Tov had lieb gehat Or. The Baal Shem Tov loved light. It actually says a story that where the Yom Yom is based out of, that the Baal Shem Tov, they knew that he always wanted candles in his Beis Medrash. He always wanted it to be light. And one night there were no candles. They could not find candles, whether they couldn't afford it or they couldn't find it, whatever the reason was. And Baal Shem Tov told them, don't worry, just take the icicles off the Beis Medrash, the frozen icicles, and light them, because then he made a miracle and the ice was lit up. The Baal Shem Tov had lieb gehat Or. The Baal Shem Tov loved light. And then the Yom Yom says something which is so deep. The Rebbe writes that Or b'gematria roz. Light is the same numerical value, the same gematria as the word roz, as the word secret. And the Yom Yom continues. There was, who has the koyach to make light? There was had the roz. If you have the secret, then you have the koyach to bring light to the world. And this is very, very, very important, because naturally, there's choshech. We look at the world as a place of choshech, as a place where there's, it's Elikus is not revealed. However, or when we see light breaking through the darkness, it reminds us that Or b'gematria roz, that we have to get in touch with the secret. And when we get in touch with the secret, when we understand the pnimius hakavana, when we understand, when we get involved, and we see the world the way the Rebbe sees the world, when we see a Yid the way the Rebbe sees a Yid, when we see Avodas Hashem the way the Rebbe does, when we understand the Roz, when we get in touch with the Pnimius HaTorah, when we get in touch with Or, the gematria of Or, the Pnimius of Or, that allows us to see the world through the lens of light. That allows us to bring that view into everything. And that is an amazing koyach. When we see the lights of Hanukkah, to remind ourselves that Or b'gematria roz, that Or is the same gematria as secret. And if you want to bring Or to the world, we have to get in touch with the roz, with the pnimius hatoyra. Now we have Hisbonenus number 5. Hisbonenus number 5, the fifth lichtul, which as a child growing up, we always heard about the story of the fifth lichtul, the fifth light, which was printed in the Kfar Chabad many years ago. And I'm not going to get into the whole story, but there's a theme in the story, and the story has been argued and debated for its authenticity back and forth. But there's no shaila about the message of the story, which derech hagav is something fascinating, that there was a famous chassid, and his name was Rabbi Leo Simpson, which all the Leo Simpsons are named after. And by him, it was very, very important that his family get together on the fifth lichtel, the fifth night of Hanukkah. And he would always make a fabrengen, like it's brought down in the Yom Yom, to that the Rabbeim would have a fabrengen with their families, a latka ovens, and say stories. And for him, the big time of the year was the fifth lichtel, the fifth night. And the children, when as he got older, they always said they wondered if this tradition would continue after he passed away. Well, he arranged that his yard site is the Fimte Lichtel, and 50 years later, the Einaklach and Or Einaklach, everyone would get together to celebrate the Fimte Lichtel because of his yard site. So they said the Zayda really, really got what he wanted. But anyways, what is the famous vort of the Fimte Lichtel, which is actually a very deep vort? And that is that it says that the Fimte Lichtel could never come out on Shabbos. Can't come out on Shabbos. Why? Why can't the? Because the fifth night of Hanukkah, we already have the koyach. It's already after 50-50. We're already on the second side. We already have the koyach. We're advanced. We already broke through the barrier. We're already on the victory side. And because we have the koyach comes dafke in choil. The whole point of the menorah is to bring the bachoil into the weekday, which in our own avodas Hashem, we have the times in our life, which is Shabbos, which is we're separated from the world, we cut ourselves off, and we're davening, whatever we're doing. So that's the Shabbos part of our life. Then we have the choil part of our life. We have the weekday part of our life. We have the part of our life which is regular, day to day, uninspired. And the koyach of the Fimte Lichtel is to bring the dafka to the Yemois HaChoil. We have the ability to bring the light even in the weekdays in our own avodas Hashem. And when we see the Fimte Lichtel burning, and we know that it's not Shabbos, and it can never be Shabbos, that gives us the proper perspective and understanding that it's our avodah to bring the of Hanukkah specifically into the choshech, into the choil, into the weekday, into the regular day-to-day life. That is the avodah of the fifth night of Hanukkah. Now we're going to talk about the avodah of the sixth night of Hanukkah, something to think about, a sixth lesson that we can take from Hanukkah. I was learning recently a fascinating vort of Sikh of the Rebbe. The Sikh of the Rebbe was said over by the Kabbalah's Ponim of Dr. Zelikson. If you look in the Sefer of the Mekadesh Yisrael, which is the pictures and the all the chuppahs that the Rebbe was by, you got a picture very clearly that the Rebbe had made a condition that if you wanted him to be Mesader Kiddushin, the Kala had to wear a sheitel and the Chassan had to have a beard. The exception to that was Dr. Zelikson. You see by his chuppah, the Chassan has no beard. And the story was that he was very close with the Beis Harav, but he actually wasn't a bocher in Tomchei Tmimim. And when the Rebbe got invited to the Chasana to be Mesader Kiddushin, he asked Reb Shmuel Levitin Olav Shalom, should he go to the wedding? On the other hand, he made like a sort of a neder, a hachlata, that he only goes to weddings where the Chassan has a beard. The Chassan was actually the fifth Lichtel of Hanukkah. And Reb Shmuel Levitin said, well, that condition only applies to Bochrim from our yeshiva. They have a higher standard, but being that he's not from our yeshiva, so there's no issue to go to the Chasana. So the Rebbe went to the Chasana, and the Rebbe said a sikha by the wedding. And the Rebbe connects the whole idea of Chasana to Hanukkah, and it's printed in Kotesiches Chelik Lamed, page 311, and the Hisafis in the back. But in short, in middle, the Rebbe speaks about a gewaldike nekuda, very, very important thing to think about on Hanukkah. And that is that seemingly We have a rule that the Eibishter says that he doesn't make miracles for nothing. The Eibishter is not oisenes lemigno. The Eibishter doesn't make a miracle for no purpose. The Eibishter could make miracles all the time. But every time the Eibishter makes a nes, there's a purpose for the nes. If you ask any child growing up in Cheder or in school, what was the miracle of Hanukkah besides the miracles of the war? They'll say there was a miracle that they found the oil. And the biggest miracle, the one that we actually commemorate for 8 days, is the fact that the oil that was only lasted 1 day lasted for 8 days. Now the question is, why did they need 8 days? So everyone says, what do you mean, why do you need 8 days? The oil was tummy, and being that the oil was tummy, in order to get the pure oil, they had to make the oil. Took 4 days each way, etc. But there is a famous klal, and the klal is tuma hutra b'tzibur, that anything of impurity in the Beis Hamikdash minadin, if the whole tzibur is tamei, it's mutter. So seemingly at this time, when the Klal Yisrael, where all the oil was tamei from the Yevonim, seemingly at that time the whole dinim of tumah fell away. So seemingly they would be allowed to light tamei dika oil. So why did the Eibishter have to make this whole nest that the pure olive oil, the pure shemen zayis zoch, stayed for 8 days? What was the reason behind this miracle? And the Rebbe explained something fascinating. And that is that the Eibishter was actually paying back the Chashmonoim for the type of Mesiras Nefesh that they had. According to Din, according to Shulchan Aruch, according to the halacha, the dry halacha, there was no reason for the Mesiras Nefesh of the Yevonim, of the Chashmonoim. There was no reason. They weren't asked to do things which were against the 3 mitzvahs. There's nowhere in the Torah where it says that you have to make war with goyim which are oppressing Yidden. That's not part of the halachis. That's not part of the way Mesiras Nefesh works. And yet, when the Chashmonoim saw that the Yevonim weren't just affecting what to do and not to do, they were affecting the whole kedusha of the Yidden. They were affecting the whole purity of Klal Yisrael, whether it was Gzeira on Taras HaMishpacha, the purity kipshutai, or they were bringing in the whole ashkaf of the Yevonim. They were contaminating the shemen, the seichel, the haskalah. They were contaminating the way we view the world. They went on Mesiras Nefesh l'mayla mitam v'das for the tahara, for the kedusha, something that they didn't have to do. It wasn't their responsibility. They did it because they had a connection to Hashem, for the kedushas Hashem, for kedushas Eretz Yisrael, and for kedushas Am Yisrael. And therefore, Midah Keneged Midah, the Eibishter said that I'm going to pay back those which fight for kedusha by having them light a tamei dika oil just because you're allowed to. They didn't make the cheshbon. What am I have to do? What I don't have to do? They went on Mesiras Nefesh for kedusha. So the Eibishter says, "Oy bazoi, I'm going to pay you back with kedusha, even though halachically I don't have to make this miracle because you could light the Menorah with tamei dika oil. I'm going to pay back your avoid of kedusha with the shemen of kedusha. You were meiser nefesh l'mayla mitam v'das." And the Eibishter says, I will pay back your avoida l'mayla mitam v'das, higher than any seichel, higher than any understanding. And the Eibishter gave us a miracle that didn't have to be halachically, because he saw the type of dedication that we have for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Rebbe learns from this a fascinating inyan, that really The whole avodah of Hanukkah is to realize that we have to value our kedusha, our halakite as a people, our halakite as a family. And we have to be very careful, not just do I have to or I don't have to. Too many times we fall into the trap, well, it's okay. It has a hechsher, must be that it's kosher. Too many times we fall into the trap of if it's permissible, it becomes mandatory. I saw an amazing vort of the Rebbe Rashab. We know that the Rebbe, in addition to printing the Hayoim Yoim, he started working on a second Hayoim Yoim. But it never actually got printed. But we do have in the back of the Hayoim Yoim the sayings that the Rebbe prepared for the next Hayoim Yoim. And one of the sayings was like this, that I don't know if it was the Friedrich Rebbe or someone asked the Rebbe Rashab, what is the avoid of Shabbos Tshuva? Shabbos of Tshuva. And the Rebbe Rashab answered, it's a Tshuva in a spirit of Shabbos. Like, okay, what does that mean? What does it mean, a Tshuva in a spirit of Shabbos? Shabbos Tshuva, Tshuva of Shabbos. What does that even mean? And the Rebbe Rashab said like this, that during the week, all the Dvarim, Hasurim, are outside the house. Inside the house, whatever's in the house is mutter. All the issues that we have are outside our home. All the nisyonis are outside. On Shabbos, even things which are mutter a whole week, and therefore they're inside our home, even that becomes muktzah, and even that we have to be careful with things which are inside our home. And the Rebbe Rashab said that that's the real avodah. The avodah of what's usher, no, it's usher for sure. But there's a certain level of avodas Hashem, kadesh atzmecha b'mutar lach. You have to serve the Eibishter even with things which are halachically okay. It has a hechsher. One of the big chidushim, and as the Chassidim would always say many times, was men tarminit. What we're not allowed to do, for sure we're not allowed to do. Was men meg, and what you're allowed to do, darf men oichenit. You don't have to. Meaning, just because you're allowed to do something, just because it's kosher, doesn't mean that it's fitting for you. And that affects everything, things that we see, things that we eat, things that we read, things that enter every part of our being, through our eyes, through our ears, through our nose, and through our mouth. We always have to ask ourselves, are we doing the avodah of the Hashmonoim? Or are we people that only do or don't do things what says and what doesn't say? And if it doesn't say that it's bad, doesn't say that it's wrong, therefore it's okay. That wasn't the way the Hashmonoim act, and that wasn't the way the Eibishter paid them back. The Eibishter paid them back with Kedusha, Kedushas Hashem, and because of the Mesiras Nefesh that they had for the Kedushas of the Eibishter, because of the Mesiras Nefesh that they had for the Kedusha of Torah, and for Hashem, and for Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. So that is something to think about on the 6th day of Hanukkah. Now we're holding the Hisboinenus Hashvi. We're holding the 7th light. And Ulay Yesh Loimar, maybe, that on the 7th night, and we see the 7 candles burning. Besides thinking, obviously, of the Menorah of the Beis HaMikdash, which the Menorah of the Beis HaMikdash had Shivas Kanei HaMenorah, it's also a very, very good opportunity, and a very important opportunity, to think about the Shalshelas Ha'ur. If you open up any Sefer of Kahos, here's a Sefer of Kahos. It says Koivitz Shalshelas Ha'ur. It's a koivitz of the chain of light, and Each Rebbe has a heichel. For example, this is the Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe, starting from the Baal Shem Tov, the Magid, the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, he's the fourth. So he's the heichel Revi. He's the fourth chamber. And in the fourth chamber, you have the different shar, you have different gates, like Maimorim, Sichis, etc. In the seven, as the seven lights are burning, we think of our seven Abayim, and especially our Rebbe, especially the seven lights, have to really remind us of the Shalshela Sa'ar. We have Shivas Kanya Menorah, our holy Rabbeim, and we have the special Avodah, we have the special job of Der Hashvi, which the job of Der Hashvi is to bring Elikus Lamata. The job of Der Hashvi is to bring Moshiach Lepoil. And we have to ask ourselves, are we involved? Are we doing what we need to do to make ourselves and the world ready? And what's the best way to do that? Is by learning Gula Moshiach. That's what the Rebbe said. That is the Derech HaYeshara Kala V'Mehira. It's the straightest, direct path to bring Moshiach is through learning about Gula and Moshiach. And when you see the seven lights burning in front of you, it's time to ask ourselves and our families, say, here are our seven Abayim. The seven lights are burning. Where are we with the Dur Hashvi? Where are we in this picture? It's not enough that there is a picture, there are seven lights, but where are we in this picture? And now we're holding the eighth meditation, which I think is one of the most important points that I want to share with you all tonight. This is such an important inyan. And I actually had to, I don't like to use the word dumb it down, but I actually, when I was invited to, I was by the mayor of Cincinnati's office the other day. We had a pre-Hanukkah celebration with the mayor, Mayor John Cranley. You could actually, he tweeted out his picture with us, the Talmidei Atmimim, celebrating Hanukkah with the Yeshivas Lubavitch of Cincinnati. And so he asked, so what's the message that we can all take from Hanukkah? He's not Jewish. What's a message that we can all take from Hanukkah? And I shared with him the following thoughts. And this is very, very important, especially when we see all 8 nights. We all get excited by big results. When we see the full menorah burning, you see someone very matzliach. When someone has full lights glowing, it's a very, very inspiring for a person. Wow, this guy made it. It's exciting to see success. But the real chokhmah, the real people with seichel, go back and trace the steps that it took to get to that success. And I told them, I want to ask you a question. If you were to find a jug of oil, and you know that it takes 8 days to make new oil, to get new oil, what type of conversation you think was going on with normal people when they only have one jug? So we said probably that there were some people that said, what's the point? What's the point? I'm gonna light it anyways, but it's anyways not gonna last for 8 days. So big deal. Why do I have to light it? Other people said, yeah, it's a good idea to light it. And really, we are faced with that challenge every single day. One of the biggest tools of the Yetzer Hara is to tell us that our specific Maisa doesn't count. The world is so big, there's so many tzoros, there's so much going on. Your one deed, your decision to light the candle just today, in comparison to what has to get done, it's nothing. Especially when you think about getting the world ready for Mashiach. Take the whole world ready for Mashiach, which basically means 8 is the number of Mashiach. How are we going to get to 8? How are we going to get to Mashiach? How is that going to work? It's so difficult. It's impossible. What is my little action going to do? How could it help? What could it accomplish? And the Yetzer Hara says, what's the point? I told Mayor Cranley, I said, Mayor and his staff, when we are faced with that question, we have to think about the lesson of Hanukkah. You do your part. You light your little maise. You do your action. It's not your cheshbon of the whole world. That the Eibishter has to take care of. You can only take care of what you have in front of you. You have your inner geula, what you need to do. You light the candle one time, and boom, you get 8 days. You get Moshiach. And really, that's what the Rambam tells us. That we have to look at the world like it's a even scale. It's a maznayim shakul. It's an even scale. But we have to know that our one ma'isa echad, one deed can tip the scale, maybe tshuva v'atzola l'chol ha'olam. So we should never, ever underestimate the power of one person, the power of one ma'isa. I was on the plane today, came back from the L'chaim with my dear brother Levi, and there were no flights that I could get to Cincinnati or even to Dayton, so I had to fly to Columbus. And I was sitting next to a Goyshe professor of music in Hofstra University. He's not just a professor, he's the chair of music of Hofstra University. And he was all excited to see me, a Jew, because he's doing research about a certain Jewish composer. And this composer went to Shanghai. He actually traveled to Shanghai to see where this composer lived and how he lived. So we were talking. And I told him that we know that there was this Japanese ambassador, I think he was, or he worked for the consulate, that he was giving out these visas for Yidden to get to Shanghai. And these were yeshiva students, the famous Mir Yeshiva, the Babich Yeshiva. A lot of Bochum ended up in Shanghai for the days in the war. So think about it. Think about it. How many hundreds of kinder und einaklach, mishpachas, from these people that were saved. At one person, you don't see it. You know, it says that every person is a olam, is a full olam. But it's hard to view it that way. But on the 8th night of Hanukkah, we remember it all started from the decision. It all started from the achlota not to give in to the Yetzer Hara that tells us that my one deed, my one time fighting, my being victorious today, big deal, what's going to be tomorrow? People say, what's the point? Getting up to down with a minion. To learn chassidus. What's going to be tomorrow, the rest of the week, the rest of the year? You can't make that cheshbon. You light the menorah today. You light what you have in front of you. Be victorious in your avodah now. And if you're victorious now and you light that candle, you open up, the Eibishter says, open up for me like a little nechala. The Eibishter promises that he'll open up for you like the opening of the ulam, the giant ulam of the Beis Hamikdash. We do our part. The victory is in that decision, not to think about how's it going to help or what's it going to do. You have the oil, you light it, and then you'll get 8. Then you'll get 8. You'll get the full menorah, and you'll get the full geula. So I really hope that these meditations or these thoughts and these stories will give us something to think about as we light our menorah this year. And maybe we be zoich, of course, to see the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi, the Hine Menorah Zav, to see the ultimate menorah. And if anyone has any questions that they would like to type in the live chat, I'm happy to address any questions. If you have anything that was discussed tonight, we'll give a minute for anyone to write a question. Happy to take the last few minutes of the shir to address those questions. And if we don't have any questions, and everything is so clear, because everything is lit up with the urt of the neshama, I want to take this opportunity to wish you all, first of all, Behemshech of Rosh Hashanah L'Chassidus, a L'Shana Tova, Belimud Chassidus, Bedarki Chassidus, Tikasevu V'Sechasemu, and wishing each and every one of you a Chag Chanukah Sameach, a Freiliche Chanukah, which we know that Nun Gimel Hey and Shin of the Dreidel is Gematria Moshiach, that we should be Zoicher, to have the true Chanukah Beis Hamikdash HaShlishi, with the Isgalus of the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach, and the Beis Hamikdash HaShlishi, and Shetaka be b'meir of Yameinu. If there are any questions again, or any comments that you would like to address, in the live chat on your screen is the place to do that. Otherwise, from the Cheder Haramim, from the teacher's room of Yeshivas Lubavitch Cincinnati, I wish you all, my Taira Chavedim, alumni, friends, family, parent body, everyone, anyone that's watching this video tonight, wishing you and your families a lichtige, ge'uledige, and freiliche Chanukah.